But as I was saying, this one here is near and dear to me because we literally just lived it. So I want to first of all welcome you to THM Spotlight Live, because today we are going to talk about when disaster strikes and it's impacting your transitional housing facility. And it's really, you're going to basically learn today some of the lessons that I had to learn in surviving the tornado that we just had here on May 16th here in St. Louis, Missouri. And there were so many great nuggets that I wanted to share. I said I must share this with my community so that we can get things started. So we're going to jump right in, and you understanding, first of all, what we're going to talk about today and really why this is important. Because, and I don't know if you've noticed where you live, but there are natural disasters that are happening more frequently. We heard about what happened out there in, I want to say that was in Virginia or in the hills. They got the flood. You got the stuff that went on in California. Now here you've got these tornadoes that are hitting large metropolitan areas. You've never heard of that. And I've been here in the St. Louis community since 2006. And this is the first time. We had one back in 2011, but nothing like this. And from where I sit, I don't think we've really seen a lot of metropolitan areas that gets hit like this from a tornado. So I wanted to be able to talk about why this matters, because now that it's happening more often and you are out here creating a program, you need to understand that this is more than the four walls that is being impacted. It's people's lives. So once you know that it's people's lives that you're impacting, whether we're talking a tornado, whether we're talking a flood or fires, it can wipe away everything instantly. It literally that fast. It can happen. And that's exactly what happened here in St. Louis on May 16th. And truly, we are still feeling the impact of that even 11 days later. So today what we're going to do is we're going to explore how you can protect your mission, your residents, and your peace of mind when emergencies like this happen. So if you feel that you are prepared, you are not prepared for something like this, not prepared for an emergency like this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or say something in the chat to let me know. Yep, exactly. We're not ready for things like this typically. So clearly this is going to be for you. Now, I had a video, but because this is limiting us, I didn't know if you guys had seen the disaster that happened here in St. Louis. And I will just encourage you, if you want to look on YouTube, I have a YouTube video of the aftermath. It won't let me show it here in this setting because it's not Zoom. But if you'd seen anything, or if you want to YouTube anything on the aftermath of the May 16th tornadoes, we're not talking about a little damage. We are talking about tremendous damage that hit the St. Louis area. And to describe it to you, because I wasn't here, I'll just say I was in California when it happened. And when I started getting the calls, it was like, what? What do you mean a tornado just hit St. Louis? But the way in which it came through, it literally hopped the highway. I know it hit Clayton, which is one of our more affluent neighborhoods, but then literally just stormed completely through the Black community, very nice older communities, just like destroyed what we are used to knowing as St. Louis City, North City. Martin Luther King, like you could literally see the destruction that tornado did through the area. So it impacted all 7 of the properties that we manage. So imagine that for just a moment, where we have a program that's mission driven in all of those properties. So we're talking about dozens of men, because we catered to men in the city. I don't think we had any females that it impacted, but several men who were impacted significantly, in which their entire livelihood was impacted for them. And that's what happened on that day. Now, when you see the videos, you're going to just be overwhelmed with the amount of destruction that happened. We had individuals who their entire homes were like either split in half, totally demolished, fully exposed, seeing everything in their homes just in shambles. So all of our properties weren't impacted like that. It was I think we had two that were declared as uninhabitable. One is suspect, and the rest of them just have a lot of damage. So imagine all of those individuals being impacted the way that they were in their properties. It just broke our hearts to be able to see how many people were being impacted by this. Even in the homes where it was still considered habitable, windows were like wide open and you still could see debris and everything still in the building, and no utilities. They had no utilities for days, like literally just 2 days ago, they'd started to get utilities on. So imagine how your life would be impacted with no utilities, no way to hook up your phone. If you had a machine that for CPAP or things that you had to keep secure, we're talking about that type of impact. And as you're working with individuals who are already vulnerable, this was traumatizing for a lot of them. So when you get to a place like that, you, as not only a person who's managing this property, but also impacting lives and a program, you have to be able to pivot very fast in an environment like that. And you have to be able to not make any mistakes, because mistakes could have already been made that you didn't even think about. But those are the type of things that you need to be prepared for. So you have to be ready to pivot and ready to move into action on behalf of the people that you represent. So if you've ever experienced a tornado, like that is devastating because it happens so quickly, or even like a hurricane. That's how I need you to be thinking as you start thinking about how do you prepare for something like this. I need you thinking about what someone would go through and then how you would go about preparing yourself for those type of things. So to put this into more context in this particular situation, because as I said, we had 7 properties. Now at one time, we owned them all outright, and we sold them to a new owner that now owned them, and we still managed it. So not only are we the ones who now manage the properties, but we now have the mission. They wanted to keep doing what we've been doing because it was working so well. So they kept us on as the property manager. And that's going to mean something as we talk through these things, because what I need you thinking about is when you get into a property, you need to be prepared for every scenario that could happen depending on how that property is being owned. So because we used to own them and then now they're owned by somebody else, where there were some things in there. We had prepared stuff years ago because they were properties we managed. So we managed them, we owned them, we had the programming. So all 3 levels we controlled. It was only recently that we no longer controlled that, which there were some things which I'm going to talk about, some of our lessons learned now that we're learning we needed to put in place before we realized that there was an issue. So those are the type of nuances that you need to think about as you are in this space, especially if you don't own it, but you manage the program. So when you don't own the property and you manage the mission, you have to understand you're responsible for making sure that the program's success happens and that the people you are serving are getting their needs met. So from a mission standpoint, you are responsible for making sure that those things happen, but you don't own it. So now that something has happened And because we at that time didn't think through, now ownership had changed, what type of things changed? The rules changed, some of the terms changed, the limitations, because you had a new owner. So all those things that we didn't have to think about before, we were thinking about after the disaster happened. So those are things that you need to think about as you're looking at property that you're not going to own, you might rent. You need to make sure you fully understand what those rules and terms are that you are creating with that owner of that property, and making sure that your program that you're creating is not impacted. Because 9 times out of 10, you're often in less authority over anything that physically changes to the property because you don't own it you don't own it, especially if you had ownership position and now you no longer do. So there's some things that you need to think about, even if you thinking about how, because like we're dealing with it right now, that we have individuals who are now displaced, and then things that are happening with insurance. All these things are happening, and all the financial decisions that have to play a part. Will there be rent increases? Like, there's so many factors in all of this that are not our decisions to make anymore because we don't own the property. So as you're considering whether you want to own, if you don't have a property yet and you're trying to figure out, should I own or should I rent? I want you thinking about what we're going through right now in helping you make that decision, because sometimes those factors can change based on who makes those decisions and how are they going to impact your program. Now, even when you're thinking about whether or not if you don't own the property, but you still have the program, there's things that you need to make sure is covered as it relates to your program and its delivery, how you're going to do that, how it impacts the community. All of those factors play a part. And I can't go into every detail here because clearly this is just a general training, but there's so much that I'm going to be offering later to help you think through those things, because those are things that you have to manage. Those are risk. That's risk that you have to learn how to manage. And if it's shared risk with you and the landlord or you and the property owner, those are all the things that you need to consider as you're in this space. So I'm telling you that up front because we're clearly going through these dynamics now, and having a clear understanding of what is and what isn't as it relates to what role people are playing. You need to talk through those things. Now, typically for you, because I can be a property manager because I am a broker. Typically in every state, you cannot manage a property unless you are an agent or a broker. In my state, because I am a broker, I can manage a property, which is a whole nother level. We're looking at then my responsibility as a property manager. If you're in a position where you're managing the property too and making sure that their needs are being met, you're going to have to wear a different hat there too, and making sure that it's seamless as far as operations are concerned, and that you're doing your job as a property manager versus someone who runs a mission, so those are the type of things and dynamics that you need to think about. And at the end of the day, if you are a property manager, you have to be accountable to that owner, not so much to the residents. So you see the balance. This is where we are right now. We are property managers with a mission, but we are responsible to the owners. So that's a 3-level dynamic that we have to think through to make sure that we aren't setting ourselves up for a failure in any one of those areas. So it's so critical that you do that when you're getting into this, that you consider all of those factors. So now that I've shared that with you and you have an understanding of what we were dealing with as it related to these properties, let me share what really happened. Because as it happened, I will tell you, everyone was in shock. We were in shock for, it was just pure chaos. Imagine not being able to get to the things you need. You're used to being able to get on the phone and call somebody, but you're not able to because a catastrophe just happened and people can't call anyone. There's so many things that are happening in that moment. People are out in the streets. Oh my gosh. And you're like being bombarded by all of the reaction. Now, mind you, I told you I was out of town. My team was still here and they were relaying to me what was going on. So even though they weren't physically there, they felt the heightened energy from this experience. And I was in California still feeling it. So imagine what the residents must be feeling as they're coming out in the streets. If they even witness, we had guys that were witnessing the tornado going over them. So clearly the impact and the initial shock that the residents are feeling from this is tremendous. So I'm just going to prepare you. If you're ever in a position like this, I will say, don't charge it to their hearts if they say things that might hurt, because that's what was happening. We had individuals who were mad and angry and still angry today. So a lot was going on with what they were feeling because they were traumatized by a tornado that just went over their head. So that's why whenever that initial shock is happening, you need to, first of all, allow for the chaos. There's nothing you're going to do to stop it. It's not going to ask permission. That's the reality. Chaos doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up. And that's why preparation is the biggest superpower that you can have to combat this, because that is going to be the initial shock that everybody in your property is going to feel when disaster happens. So you have to be prepared for what is to come. And it doesn't like resolve overnight. We're still dealing with it 11 days later. So imagine utilities are knocked out. You have no power. You have no water. You have no gas. You have no Wi-Fi. You have no internet. You have no connection. Like, these are things that is initially going on with your residents. So as you sort of put that into perspective, now you can start thinking about what is it that you can do in this space? What is it that you can do to help, I want to say, mobilize this space? Because it's going to happen. But this is where now leadership kicks in. This is where you kick in as a leader. Despite what is going on, you have 3 responsibilities when this is happening, and you don't have a lot of time to sort through it. You have to first make sure that you can secure the people. You need to make sure you have a plan where you know how to see where people are and where is everyone at, and accountability, because that is the scariest thing at this moment, because you don't know if someone's trapped. You don't know if someone is even there, they're missing, or heaven forbid if they're dead. So you don't know what's going on. Your job is to secure the people who are in your program first. That is your priority number 1. And then making sure you can then get to a position where you document everything. So as you're documenting everything, we'll talk about this. I just want to make sure you understand these are your big 3 things right now. And then communication and mobilizing the situation. So as you look at those 3 areas, you have to be swift but calm all at the same time, because this is basically the lifeline to you bringing this into subjection to you being in control. So as you are securing everyone in the property, making sure that the property's safe and calming everybody down, that is a skill that you're going to have to tap into. And then how do you go about making sure you get the things that you need, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But you're going to slide into these roles. And then how is it that you're going to communicate with people and make sure that that communication is solid, not only with your staff so they know what's going on, but also with the residents. How are you communicating with them well? So, and I'm a firm believer, like, we have an amazing an amazing system that we have in place that in our VIP we offer to people, because this is how we can really be Johnny on the spot when you have a moment that you need to be communicating. You want to be able to do that well, and not just to the people in the properties, but also to your partners, because you need to keep your partners aware of situations as well, especially if they're paying to be a part, they're funding your program. You want to have a way in which you're communicating step by step what's going on. And then, of course, making sure that you're communicating with your insurance company. So those are your top 3 things that you need to move into when it gets to this space. Now, I do want to ask, I'm going to check the chat here real quick, because I want to see of these steps 1, 2, and 3. I just want to know, which one of these do you feel most confident in right now? You as a person, even if you don't have a program set up yet, which one do you feel you're most confident you could be able to grasp? Either securing the people, step 1, documenting everything, step 2, or communicating and mobilizing, step 3. Which one of those would you say is your strongest? Okay, I see some people. Yep, because I feel I'm really strong on 3, because we have a system that's amazing that allows for us to communicate well with residents so that everyone is aware and we keep everyone informed. If I had to choose between the 3, it's probably going to be number 1, if I had to say, because let's say if the situations got really big, it's going to be hard. And how are you going to find everybody, especially if the phones are down, your systems are down? Like, you need to be quick to be able to secure people and make them and assess quickly. Now, and I see people putting 2s and 3s, very good. But let me tell you about that first one for a minute, because when it happened, because I told you I was in California, but I had my team immediately on it. The moment it happened at 3, I think it was like 3:15, our team was literally going to see where everyone was. But this was the thing we didn't anticipate. When they tried, because it was so big, you couldn't get there. Because imagine the tornado just went through there and like tore down trees throughout, roofs were off buildings. You had HVAC systems in the middle of streets. Like, that was the one that, out of this experience, that was the hardest one for us to get a grip on, just to make sure people were safe. But we quickly got into motion to make sure we could account for everyone, to make sure everyone was safe. But we couldn't physically get down there. So we had to then count on our secondary option to be able to mobilize that. So I see some of you on the same point as it relates to that. So just want you thinking through that, because that is clearly something that you need to always have in front of you. Now, as we go to, I just lost my slide. Hold on. I lost my slide. There we go. So now that you have, I heard some of you say 2s and 3s. I was the only one who said 1, but that's okay. Because I think once you understand it, that was a really hard one out of the 3. But the goal is that you just get prepared. That's how you need to step in as a leader in those areas. Now, as you move into that, I'm going to tell you there were some things that we had in place that actually helped us. And I want to encourage you, if you don't have these type of things in place, get them in place, because being able to have a way in which individuals can check in, like I was keep talking about our communication, like we are able to say, hey, let us know where you are, and they could speak for each other. We had a way in which residents could check in, and we document how that system works. As well as, after it happened, we had a way in which we could get pictures, because we could not get there for like almost a day and a half. I think it was the next day or the day and a half. I think it took us, because the streets were like, couldn't get down on all of our properties. I think we may have been able to hit 1 or 2, but being able to quickly get in place the process for how you can assess the damage. Now, clearly, our job, you're not getting in there to be able to like know all the details, but you need to assess it on a very basic level. Is the property habitable? That is the most important assessment you need to make as a person who manages the property and the program is, are the people safe? If they're safe, then you take your pictures, you make sure they're time stamped so that you can be in position to assess whether or not they can stay or not, and then how much damage has been done. And we actually have a way in which you can just evaluate on a quick level, which is what the city did too, which was interesting. Their process was a little different. I'll share what they did. Was they had a green, yellow, red system. So if the house was not habitable at all, it was red. If it was cautious, enter at your own risk type of thing, they still didn't want you going in, but they had made it yellow. If it was structurally sound but had some damage, it was green. So that was their system, which we are making some changes on our system to utilize some of that, because it would seem pretty simple. But there's some other dynamics you need to evaluate in that, which we'll share with you guys if you're interested in getting our toolkit related to emergency preparedness. But those are the things that you want to be able to assess. And then you want to be able to have a process that you follow in case of temporary relocation. Now, I'm just going to say, I don't think we thought as far as like a mass of relocation. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it on the next slide or not, but I'll just briefly say we had a plan for relocation for individuals, but it was so big that it required a bigger and better plan, which we've now made updates based off of that, because just to make sure we've covered everything. And then making sure, how do you manage the utilities, especially when individuals need generators and things like that. So those are the type of things you need to be thinking about as you're putting together your emergency protocol. Now, what went wrong? We had a lot of things go wrong. And I want you learning from our experience. Now, mind you, we've been doing this for 15 years. We ain't ever had a tornado come through. We've had things happen where someone had to move someplace else because of an issue with property. Those are easy. It's those mass ones that really can impact you significantly. So when this happened, our biggest issue was around the roles. As you heard me say, when we came in, we originally owned the properties. So we were the owner, property manager, and program project manager. Well, when those roles shifted, it got confusing. Well, who's doing what? And it literally, when I say it went wrong, like it, and even the dynamics, as I think about it, we're still working through it, because it's clearly causing issues even as we sit here 11 days later. And we literally had to have a meeting today to talk about these roles and get it level set so that we can then communicate everything going forward to the residents. Also, there was conflicting information getting to the residents before this and during this that made it hard for residents to know who to talk to. We've been on the scene forever. Many of them have been with us for such a long time that they always knew our voice, but they were hearing conflicting information from other parties, from the new owners, that was making them uncomfortable. And I'll just say, a lot of that conflict came also from the city when they started putting those stickers on the building, because when they saw the red, even though it said in the small print, you're not allowed to come in or out, they weren't telling people that they couldn't stay. So when we knew something was uninhabitable, we took action, but then we were getting conflicting information from the city as well as from the owner, because the owner doesn't want to lose all the people. So in their eyes, the building looks like it's safe, so you're going to stay. But then you've got the city saying that it is an issue. And then you're looking at us, we're like, no, clearly this is safety issue number one. So it was that conflicting information that really did not work well for us as we were trying to manage and mitigate all of this risk. And because there was some time, I told you it was 11 days here. Now we finally got some response where we weren't getting response from the owner as much, because they were dealing with what they were dealing with insurance, but we weren't hearing anything, where before we would have been in the mix hearing everything day one, what was going on, so we could quickly communicate with the residents. So because of those things, and I'll say, the lack of citywide emergency housing. So we have a population that is so vulnerable that there is no housing for them because of the population that we serve. And because they have very limited housing opportunity, and across the city, there was none, it made it hard for the residents. So they're like nervous, they're scared, they're traumatized. All these things are happening for them as this is going on. So I want you to clearly see, even though you could have best intentions and plan and put together an emergency preparedness plan that is going to be 80% right, you never really know. And you could even still test it out and do drills. And guess what? You still are going to run into some things that are going to go wrong. So I'm telling you all this from somebody who's done this for so long. There was not, like, we couldn't even anticipated everything because this has never happened before. So knowing this now, you get the opportunity to learn from our experience, to live vicariously through us and our experience, and create something that's going to be amazing. Especially if you use our template, our toolkit, then, and we're going to tweak it, then you could feel pretty good about what you would get to start with. But at the end of the day, these things still went wrong, even after we did everything we could to make sure that it went right. So these are the things I can honestly say is saving us today, because we have an amazing leadership team that's ready, on point, ready to move and take action. And we have leaders within our organization as well as at each property that sort of has stepped in those roles and did what was necessary to keep people informed. That's why I love what we've built and how it even still, in spite of all the faults or the things that went wrong, we were still able to move forward. We also have an amazing documentation process that's digital that allows for us to be able to seamlessly get to what we need to get, as well as getting information from our residents in a seamless way. Those things matter, especially in emergencies like this. You don't want to have to be chasing down a piece of paper. Where did that paper go? Where is that at? No, you don't want to be that person, or have to communicate with your residents and trying to reach them and nobody's answering the phone. You don't want a system like that. You want a system that is seamless and set up well, where you can communicate and do that well with your partners. So your partners are aware at all times what's happening in this emergency situation. Being able to do that and have solid partnerships that they know, even if you didn't talk to them, they know, I know that HomeQuest has it. That's what they would say. You want them to be able to say that about your company. And that is critical to having those strong partnerships. When emergencies happen, that can be your savior. Also, being able to have those assigned roles at the properties, because clearly, without them, those people stepping up into leadership that sort of help make things smooth, and they do it because they love doing this and they love what you represent, they're going to clearly step up and do their part in case of emergencies. So those are the type of things that saved us when we were in this space, and those are the things that will save you too when you get there, if you ever get to a situation where you need it. Now, I will say, as an operator of one of these programs, you definitely don't want to wait. I want to stress and encourage you, prepare now, because a day will come. Prepare to the best of your ability, mapping out exactly everything you're going to need to make sure that you have a plan in place in case of any emergency, not in case of just a fire. Nobody really thinks about that tornado or a flood. All of those things, like, think of the worst case scenarios, because you want to have a plan in place so that you're prepared. And then when it's time, you know how to access it. You ain't going to try to find a notebook somewhere. You better be able to go on and grab it. And those are the type of things that you want to have in place. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible. You're legally responsible and you're ethically responsible, which I want to talk about that briefly. I don't know if I'm going to talk about it later in another slide, but I need you to understand, at the end of the day, you're responsible for people. And I don't care what you put in place that legally protects you, because clearly you want to be legally protected. And I'm going to tell you, make sure you are legally protected in every area. But that ethical part, the right thing to do, sometimes you got to make those tough decisions. You might be protected legally, but doing something for somebody because it's ethically right, you need to be prepared to do that too. And do what you can. Like, if you don't have the means to do it, you don't have the means. But I will tell you, you want to be able to protect yourself and be responsible legally and ethically with anything that you have going on as your mission is built out. And then making sure your systems are in place that help you do what you need to do and help you protect the people that you serve. But most importantly, protecting your name. And I'm going to talk about that, I know, on another slide, but you want to make sure that whatever you do and say, you're going to protect your name at the end of the day, because this is what you're building. This is your legacy. And if this is your legacy, then you do what's necessary to protect it. And sometimes doing things because it's ethically right is the best thing to do, especially when it comes to protecting your name. So as you think about the cost that this makes emotionally, because you need to understand that your energy, you coming into this, that's the make or break in this. You cannot come into this with high energy because they have high energy, because you will lose, period. Your job is not to match their energy, but to bring it down. Because in situations of emergencies like this, it is emotionally heavy. I was not settled in my spirit for days after this happened. So imagine where they are. An emergency just happened. Their homes, their clothing, their belongings, their personal items, all has been impacted. Some may be expressing themselves through crying. Some people may be you need to understand how they're going to come to you expressing themselves. But most importantly, they're going to be scared and they're going to be angry because this happened. Not that you created the tornado. There's nothing that you could have done to create that tornado. But how you respond to it is critical. And you need to recognize when individuals are traumatized and when they're tired. I don't even know what it's like to go a week, 11 days, 2-3 days without electricity in my phone. I don't know what that's like, but can you imagine? If you can imagine, or if you've had that happen, go ahead and give me some comments, because that's real. So how you lead into this is critical. And you got to lead from grace. You got to lead from a space of giving them grace, because they're going to be mad. And you have to stay calm, even while you may feel overwhelmed, even where you might feel beat up. And you need to get support when you need it. I can say this has been 11 days, and it's at its height over the weekend. And today I'm getting ready to meet with the residents tomorrow. I already know what I'm walking into, because a lot of people are angry. But my job is to go in here, lead with grace, come with empathy, understanding their situation, and doing what I can to help support. Even if legally we don't have a responsibility to provide certain things, which we'll talk about, I think, on another slide, but ethically, something has to be done, because these are individuals with no housing. And they're still without I think we have one building still with no electricity, and it's day 11. So being able to help stay calm and do these things, this is the honorable thing that we must do, is work this from a space of grace and extending that to them in this time when they need us most. So when you get into this space, because I need you to understand that there are specific things that you are responsible for. And I will say, if you find yourself in a position now, many of you will most likely either own the property and have the program, or rent the property and then have the program. Regardless of the situation, the person that's listed on that utility, you need to understand that that is going to be most likely your LLC, more than anything else. I can't see, unless you're a property manager like me, because in our case, the property manager, we are listed as over all the utilities. But you need to understand you're financially responsible when your name is on there. So if you are getting ready to open up a program with a mission, do not use your personal name. It's because you are going to be setting yourself up for being the responsible party. At least have your LLC, because that gives you that buffer that you need between anything happening and being liable, and the residents, because this is reality. We're in a litigious nation, a litigious community. Everyone's suing for everything. I know we've been getting threats since this whole thing happened, coming after us for what we did or did not do. At the end of the day, we know we've done the very best that we can do, and let them deal with that. And we're doing what we can to hopefully give other resources so they can see we're here to help them, not to hurt them. But we can't change that fact. But I want to encourage you, if you are not in control of that property, make sure your LLC is listed. If you don't have an LLC, then that's a whole nother thing. But you want to make sure, because you are responsible. And if you are not the property manager, don't put your name on there. Put your LLC on there. So I want to stress the importance of that. Let me make sure I don't have any questions here real quick that I can answer real quick. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so I did have a question or a comment in the group that says, will it help to have a chaplain or pastor with you when you speak to angry residents? It doesn't hurt. Even your partners, I would encourage, especially if you have a partner that's, they have people who can sort of help you have those conversations. But I would highly recommend anyone to help support, even having a person who deals with trauma available, who sort of help you navigate that space. Because I've already tapped on one of our partners to do that tomorrow, because these are those critical days, and you want to make sure that you get all the support you can, because when they're angry, they're going to strike out, and you can't get defensive. You definitely have to be here to be able to help. And I saw mention about the internet. That's what we were dealing with as well. Now, some phones have Wi-Fi on them. That was our saving grace. Even in the midst of this, the phones did get jammed, but it eventually faded where we're able to get through. So that is a part of reality as well. We literally just got the internet on at all the buildings, I think, over the weekend, but many people had phone access. So that did help in a lot of cases. Where I live, sometimes. Yeah. I mean, so I was just reading a comment where, if you know you're going to be in an area where there's storms, then your emergency preparedness plan, you need to think about what that could look like, right? I'm trying to think of so if you have the internet going out, you could potentially have a hotspot. Those are things that could work, but you need to be thinking through, if you're especially in a place where the internet is out all the time, because if that's your means of communicating with your residents, you can't have that being impacted. You also can think about, like, I used to actually have phones. We don't do that anymore. We don't do the phones in the landlines. But if you know you're already having an issue, you need to be thinking through those type of things. Those are some good questions. So now let me go back to the slides. So let's go ahead and talk about some truths, because clearly many people in this situation, first of all, let me just say this. The responsibility for a property, the owners are responsible for making sure that the structure is sound, that there are no repairs necessary in the building, and structurally sound, and it's habitable. Those are their responsibilities. Anything outside of that, residents should get renter's insurance. Now, I'm going to say I know some people, which I'm shocked. People just think they just need renter's insurance. You need more than just renter's insurance. Renter's insurance by itself is not enough. But the one thing that we had as a glaring issue was we didn't have enough residents who took renter's insurance. Now, I'm going to say you must, like, hindsight 2020, which we're already making changes right now to make sure that that never happens again. That would have been a saving grace had we thought that one through fully. We wouldn't have made it an option. It would have been a requirement. But renter's insurance clearly is not enough when you're talking about a program running. And there are specific responsibilities that the owner has as well as the operator of that program, and they are separate. So I want to encourage you, if you're going to be the owner and operator, you need more than, you need both. You need to have liability insurance, you need to have homeowners insurance. You need to offer renter's insurance for your residents. You need to make sure that those things are available so that when this does happen, because an emergency will happen, you're prepared. And you do not want that responsibility to fall on you. Also, you want to make sure that as you are documenting your stuff, that was number 3, I think, on the list. No, it was number 2. Documenting with everything you have as far as pictures of the property, everything that's in the property. I would even video record, but you want to make sure that you have photos that are time stamped of everything that's there. Because in most cases, if you're running a program, all the furniture, everything is covered by you, which if you get the right insurance, you make sure you got those things in place that protect that property. And that's your best defense, is making sure you have strong pictures that are time stamped, and you do that. Now, you also want to have other options available when temporary housing is needed. Now, I'm just going to tell you, this here is where, because there were so many people impacted and we had so many individuals that just simply had no housing, especially because it was a vulnerable population, we didn't have any resources. So that's why some, unfortunately, are still living in the property under caution. Even if we tell them, you understand, you can't, they're telling you you can't, but nobody's kicking you out. Those are the risks that they take because they have nowhere else to go. They would either be in a shelter, and a lot of them don't want to go to shelters. So I want to encourage you, as you're thinking through your emergency preparedness plan, go ahead and get those relationships established. So in case of an emergency, you need a room or two, you know who you're going to go to. Or if you have a church that doesn't mind popping up a little emergency shelter for you that's close by, you've got that relationship that you built. Even if you have to have a host family. Now, that's what happened to us here. We had individuals who had family that just let them stay there, and they let someone else stay there. Like, we had to be creative on top of looking for housing, just because we were exhausted. We exhausted all of our other resources. But you want to make sure that you've got that temporary housing option in place in case of an emergency. Those are the things that will save you at the end of the day from situations, especially where that property is not livable. And you actually have to think beyond a hotel. Hotels are expensive, let alone having them in the case of emergencies. Sometimes they go up on pricing, which is terrible, I feel, but it happens. So you need to just be creative in the type of temporary housing options that you make available. And I would just say, make sure you always document, like if you do have to utilize it, you document who's staying, who's paying for what. Like, you need to have all that laid out in your head on how all that works. Because even though it protects you, it's more than, hospitality. It's actually, it's make sure you have the protection that you need so that you are not at risk. So as you think through those things, we've got also some funding emergencies that are available. Now, we actually just heard about some of these things that just came open today, which we'll be sharing with our residents tomorrow. But which they've now got FEMA grants available for them to tap into through our urban league. So we're going to be literally sending a lot of them there. Hopefully they can get some housing, but you also want to make sure you're building up some type of emergency reserve. If you don't have an emergency fund for things like this that can hold a few $100s in case of an emergency, you need to have that, or have access to credit lines or business accounts to be able to help you cover in case you need an emergency. Because right now I can say hindsight 2020 in this situation, and it was literally right at the time when the owners were getting ready to get paid, because it was the 16th. It happened on the 16th. And on the 16th was the day we were making payment, literally that day. So hindsight 2020, I should have pulled funds out, emergency funds for reserve for that purpose, getting permission from the owner to do that. We don't have that now. But those are the type of things you need to think about as you're building this out. Doesn't mean you have to utilize the reserve, just have it available in case of an emergency. But you want to be able to tap into some funds pretty quickly. And even the community itself, I mean, they're doing all sorts of things out here now, raising funds. I got people out in Wentzville and all of the rural areas saying, hey, we want to help, tapping on them and saying, yeah, can we have some funds? There are people who are willing to help. You just need to be the one tapping on them and saying, hey, would you like to be a part of our emergency plan? And go ahead and put it in place. So whenever you do need to be triggered, you already have that person in place to partner with you in case of immediate relief. So the faster you can cover those costs, the faster you can then stabilize your residents so that they can be calm. So now that we've talked through that funding piece, let's talk briefly about some of the crisis communications that you really need to have in place. These are basically life or death type of things that you need to have. And that's why I was telling you we have a very robust communication plan that we can kick in at any time related to how we communicate with the residents, we communicate with staff. All those things are solid. So once something happens, they're immediately like, we are on point. And then how do you respond to people externally? Those are your partners. Those are the owners, if they have owners of the property. If you ever have to talk to the press, which I personally don't create things for the press, but you can still be tapped into that. I really make sure my partners and the owners and the community itself is aware of what's going on. And it has to be one voice. It can't be like I'm the main person. We have things that are set up that are communicated. I just create it so that our team can then communicate that out. So we have one plan, one system for getting those communications out, and you must do it frequently, especially at the beginning, because the one thing you don't want to be is that person waiting for a comment and you don't hear anything from an owner, from a property manager, from a program manager. You must do it regularly and let them know up front. You're getting ready to get a lot of messages because we want to keep you informed. But those are the type of things that you need to be in motion to be able to do. So as you get through this place of making sure that you're communicating well, you need to now have to reset the mindset and the mission of the people who are there. Because your job now is to stabilize the chaos, bring it down. And this is where you can set yourself apart from anywhere else and being able to do that. You also must understand that it's your mission that always needs to stay in front. So whatever you need to communicate or say or anything around this mindset, you need to be able to communicate it well. And you're always with your mission in front of it. Because as you keep people focused on it, remember when those of you who've participated in my 5-day challenge where we talk about mindset, we talk about your mission, that why is the very thing that's going to keep you solid. So once you understand it's that disaster that came is your test for your why. And that's what fuels your how. So if you understand that, then this is your test for your why to see, is your why really your why? Those are the type of things that you want to make sure that you're ready for and that you get in front of. So as you think about what you need, and I'm quickly trying to get through, we only have a few more minutes, but I want to go over, you must have some type of communication protocol, have a binder electronically that you can get to that quickly outlines all the things that's necessary for your emergencies, what process you need to go through to shut off utilities, who do you have MOUs with for this type of emergency, who are you going to call on, and then making sure you have all of your updated policies so you know how to access them, how to get them so you can quickly move on it, and who is supposed to do what. If you know who's supposed to do what, this is going to help you move smoothly through this process. So as you think about what you need to do this week, if you don't have an emergency plan, I want you to take a picture of the screen right now. These are the things I want you to do this week. Because if you're not at the point where you're supposed to have an emergency, you don't have insurance at all, because you're still just thinking through this. Don't hurt to tap on somebody and say, hey, I'm thinking about insurance. What does that look like? So you can understand what that policy looks like. But review it if you have it, or at least get one so you can see what one looks like. And you must then create your emergency contacts cheat sheet so that you know in case of emergency, this is who you contact. And I would encourage you to, once you get all these things in place, go ahead and do a drill, and even do scenarios so you know what to do in case of a drill or in case of an emergency, knowing how it works. What does that drill look like? And then, of course, having pictures of everything in the property, not just pictures, but also a video. I do a video of the entire room, every item, and have it documented and time-stamped. So if I might not have a picture for every item, but I have a video showing you everything that's in that room so that we have it covered. So heaven forbid everything's lost, you can show everything that you had in that property. And then making sure that you have those partnerships secure. Those are the type of things I want to encourage you to do. So I'm not going to get through all the slides, but I do want you to know that when you're not prepared, these are the things that are at risk. And I'm just going to tell you, out of all of these things, making sure that your residents don't suffer any longer than they have to, that's what you need to be focused on, and making sure that the properties aren't exposed. But at the end of the day, your reputation can be destroyed all because you didn't prepare. And I'm going to say that and end on it because I have a couple more minutes. I want to make sure I at least talk through the special we have for our toolkit bundle. I actually have made this toolkit available for, it was originally $147. Because this really just touched me and impacted me, I'm going to let you guys have it for $47. It's going to be the entire, basically our response plan, the responsibility agreement, and the disconnection notices that you can get so that you can start preparing something for yourself. And on top of that, we're going to offer as a bonus the claim log template that you can use, which allows you to track the expenses and the damages and be able to attach what you need to when in case of an emergency, so you can quickly grab what's needed. Now, I'll also say, if you have not signed up yet, because June 9th is going to be our next 5-day challenge. Those of you who've not participated, I have gone down to $297 for that. It's regularly $497. We'll never offer that first special again. Those of you who had it back then, I'm glad you did it when you did, because right now it's $297 to participate on our 5-day challenge that allows for you to be able to see what it is that you're building. Because without that clarity, you won't even know what your why is and how it can be tested when you have an emergency plan in place. So these are the things we would cover. After that 5 days, you would have a blueprint that you literally can run with. I've already got people signed up now. So we slid the date to June 9th just to make sure everyone can attend who have already signed up. And I'll be doing that challenge, as I said, that week. And I want to just encourage you, if you are interested in any more that we have to offer, you see the things that we have in the background. And I just want to encourage you to please make sure that you do not disregard this information, because clearly the things that I thought I knew, I didn't even, because I never had to test a tornado. But now I can say honestly, my emergency plan is solid after this because we've tested it out. Now you need to make sure that whenever you create a program, that you protect the people that you are wanting to serve, and you protect your why, because those are the very things that's going to take you to the next level of what it is that you're building. So with that being said, I'm going to just check and see if there's any questions. I know I'm over a minute. So I want to make sure there are no other questions. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to give this recording out because some things are going to change in the next few days. So I'm just letting you know right now, some things are going to change and the recordings will no longer be available. At least these type of recordings. I'm going to make this we have a new community that's opening up in the next few days, and only people who are in that community, if you've paid for something with me, you've got at least the 8 steps, you've got my VIP, you automatically come over to our paid community. But I'm going to start putting it there just because I give so much great knowledge through these. I want to make sure that the people who want it can grab it. And everyone else, when you're ready, you just come when you're ready. So this is our meeting today. I look forward to working with you and the 5-day challenge. If you're a VIP, that's starting right behind it. And I look forward to helping you achieve what you want to achieve in Transitional Housing Maximize. Thanks so much for attending, guys. See you at the next one.